quick as possible. It's going to be limited to 30 minutes because I don't want to take up any more of your time than necessary, so thanks for coming. But, so, hacking on Gaia stuff is a little bit of a pain at the moment. We have lots of different ways of hacking on Gaia. So you can hack directly on the device, you can hack with B2G desktop, you can hack in Firefox, and all sorts of combinations of those. So what I want to talk about is what actually works for different people, who is developing in what doesn't work, what are the biggest blockers that are preventing people from getting on with their work, what are the things that we should be getting fixed, because there's a lot of things which are bugs in the platform which aren't getting marked as blocking plus because they wouldn't actually block a release, but they're blocking us from working towards Basecamp. And we need a different way of tracking those things. And the other big thing is we're onboarding a bunch of new people. So there's some people coming in from web dev who are helping out with Gaia. And also there's going to be a large number of contractors coming on board who are going to be helping with Gaia. And at the moment, we don't have a very good set of documents to get them up and running because, to be honest, we don't really know ourselves the best way to hack on Gaia. So what I wanted to do is to just share some best practices and find out what does work and come up with some kind of action plan for documenting better what does work and for getting those people on board so that we can maximize that, because maybe at the moment we're not working as efficiently as we could be. There's also a guy called Fred, who I haven't met, who is heading over here right now, who is working on outreach to third-party app developers and wants to know what he should tell them about how to create apps for Firefox OS, which is a really good question, because I tried creating an app for Firefox OS just to see what it was like, and actually it's really hard. Like, you should just be able to open Firefox and start developing a web app, and right now that isn't necessarily possible because of the way the permissions work and the APIs and things. So that's something else. So can we start with just a quick show of hands, like how many people develop directly on the device all the time? No one. Just so far. Okay. How many people develop on B2G desktop most of the time? Okay. How many people develop inside Firefox, desktop Firefox? Okay, so it's a fairly even split. And I'm guessing that a lot of people will switch between different things. Right. So this is one thing I do a lot, is start off with the layout and the CSS in Firefox and just hack the DOM with the DOM inspector to get the structure, and then switch to B2G desktop because actually a lot of stuff doesn't work in Firefox. So is that a fairly common approach?
I try to do that pretty much all the time.
People do it all the time. Right.
Also depends on what you're looking for. Sometimes you go into the browser, sometimes you need to go B2G, and sometimes you need to go to the DOM directly. So
Yeah, no, but so like for most applications, you can build like this. What I've been doing for camera, video, and browser is when you're just doing the layout parts, you stub out any of the like API needed stuff and develop as much as you can in the browser. And then once your layout's fine, then I go back to usually the device and plug in the APIs. That was the kind of workflow I was talking about, and that's what I do all the time.
Yeah. So what are the biggest things that don't work right now that would make your lives easier?
Remote debugger.
Remote debugger. Can someone mind noting it down?
I can take,
You got
yeah, oh, I don't have the internet.
Oh, no, I'll write it down here. So you said the remote debugger. Do you mean on the device or in like B2G desktop or?
Both.
Shouldn't it work?
Yes.
It had a bug last week, but even that, when we have the remote debugger, it doesn't have the layout tools.
Yeah. So it's just
like
the JavaScript
like a
debugger,
remote
right?
DOM
Yeah.
inspector.
So so you can't inspect the DOM, you can't do the style editor and like all that stuff.
Yeah,
Okay.
because I think they need to like port each of those one by one. Like they have the remote web console now.
Yeah.
Just like-
Okay, so DOM inspector and style editor, etc. If you could develop inside Firefox and do everything inside Firefox, would you do that, or would you still want to use B2G desktop instead?
I do Firefox.
Yeah. No one would use BDG desktop. What is that? Like, I use BDG desktop a lot because of all the activity stuff I need to work. Like, if Firefox could do activities.
Firefox can do activities, yeah. Well, it should.
How many of you who use desktop builds use Linux?
That's a good question.
Because it's a really crappy experience that I've been having.
I don't know what the Red Engine team did with the Linux build, but it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
You need to build it yourself, and then you need one magic patch, because there's an issue in the Linux build. Basically, it's not repainting as it should, and Chris Jones has a patch for that.
Yeah, I saw
which
that.
makes it correct.
Okay.
But this patch is not included in the Red Engine, and there are quite a few other problems in the Red Engine team, so
Okay.
on the Red Engine build. So just don't use the Red Engine builds on Linux.
So is that a patch that we could get landed so that everyone has it? Like why is it?
Ask Chris.
Okay.
The patch is raising other issues, so I guess that's why this patch hasn't landed yet.
Sometimes it works. Like mine paints okay, but
Yeah, mine are okay as well. But there are some other, like if I get back to the home screen, then the home screen is blank and I have to restart BTG.
yeah.
I get some side effects.
Yeah, mine crashes. That's the if you ever hit the
Also,
home
with
key,
all those,
it crashes.
that's something I did for Zeno. Like I had an infinite loop restarting BTG, so it felt like pretty smooth.
So that's another big bug. But whenever you hit the home key to navigate back to the home screen, it just segfaults B2G desktop. Right? Is that just on Linux, or does that happen on other platforms as well?
That doesn't happen on Mac.
Doesn't happen on Mac. Okay.
Well, at least I haven't seen it.
I've never seen that.
Have you not seen it on? Do you do it on Mac or
Mac.
Linux?
Never
Mac.
seen it on
Okay.
Mac.
Okay. So it's probably unique to Linux then. Yeah, because that's a real pain in the ass. Are there any other big things that are stopping people from developing?
I think in Firefox the problem is you can develop the system app, so
Yeah.
you can open an application, but if you want to do something like switching applications or the car view or this stuff, you cannot do it in Firefox.
Vivian, is there any technical reason why it's impossible for us to get the system app to work in Firefox?
It runs in Firefox. I think the issue you raise is when you open an application, Firefox by default does not open it inside the system app, but it
Yeah.
opens another tab or another window.
I mean, that is kind of a pain, but is almost what I would expect in desktop Firefox.
Yeah,
But for me, it doesn't even run at all. Like if I run the system app, I just get the Mozilla splash screen, and it doesn't go past that.
Yeah, so it would generate some, because I think it doesn't work because you don't have a mode setting API,
Right.
and so the JavaScript just break. And
The mouse setting is really, because I don't see why the mouse setting doesn't work on desktop, why it wouldn't work on desktop, or at least provide a decent fallback. And this is preventing a lot of apps to work for very quickly. That's the, like the email app and the calendar app are quite fun to work on because despite the fact they have a complex structure, they work as well, even better in Firefox than they work on the device. But a bunch of other apps are a bit frustrating to work on. The settings come quite high in the list because less and less things work on the desktop. You need to be on the device for more and more features because we don't have time to do polyfills off of desktop or to get some bullshit APIs as fallbacks.
So should we even be trying to get all development to work on a desktop, or do we just accept that some things just will never work on the desktop?
I think we should be able to work on the desktop because
Right.
most of the contributors don't have any device, and because productivity-wise, you still should be able at least to debug the layout on the desktop.
Right.
We get like a web RT solution that works, but with the debug tools. I think does that make sense? So I tried to use those for like Calendar, for example, which only uses system XHR, and instead of launching at all, it just gave me a blank screen. I don't know if that project, I don't know what's going on with that project in particular.
Which project, sorry?
WebRT.
I have no idea.
Okay.
You sit next to them sometimes.
I do?
Sometimes.
I should know this, but I don't.
So should we be spending time writing polyfills to make everything work on a desktop? Would that be a worthwhile use of our time, or not?
I think it would make more sense to get WebRT working.
Yeah.
WebRT.
Get a real work.
Yeah.
Kind of working as opposed to polyfill.
We don't.
Right.
Polyfills are just
No,
gonna break.
there are some parts for which it would make sense, like the Wi-Fi won't work on Firefox desktop and probably not on B2G desktop as well. So that it would be worth to have a decent polyfill for Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
And I used to have one. It's been broken recently, but I used to have one. But for settings, like mouse settings, it should just work out of the box. There's no reason why we should be using
Yeah,
polyfill.
yeah. And I don't understand why we've been spending so much time making B2G desktop work when that, like, it's a crappy kind of experience to develop in it.
Yeah, so I kind of agree with that because like we're really laser focused on mobile right now, so it makes sense for us to have a screen that looks like a phone. But web apps are not just for mobile devices. So if someone's building an open web app that they want to run on Mozilla, it shouldn't just be for mobile devices, right? So it should work on web runtime.
I mean,
Another difference, I think, is B2G desktop is exactly the same application that will be installed on the device.
Right.
So that it should work because that's what you will use. So that's a good point to use it.
I do think there are some good reasons for using B2G desktop, like all the dialogues and stuff that the system app handles. So prompt, confirm, HTTP authentication. They probably won't get caught and used. The system app won't catch those if you're doing it in desktop Firefox.
Yeah.
You should be able to write an extension to override everything in Firefox.
Okay, so it would actually be possible to get that.
Yeah,
right.
it's possible.
I think the only two hard things are DPI is not going to be the same.
DPI is an
and,
issue.
Activities are going to be hard to make work nicely.
Oh, you can.
Well, they're going to be weird because they're like apps are new, because Firefox does have like the knowledge about apps, and it opens in new windows and doesn't have the transition system that we do in Window Manager.
Well, the thing is, everything is based on XPCOM, and the nice things with XPCOM is like we can write custom XPCOMs that overrides the one from Firefox.
So we could have like the system app work inside a single tab.
Yeah, it just takes time, and it's not something we ship, so it's
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so it sounds like in the long term it is at least theoretically possible to make everything work in desktop Firefox and look exactly the same as it would on the device. But it's just
Not exactly, but close.
Okay, but it's probably not. So, but we probably wouldn't focus on that before V1, right?
I think so.
We have to reach some intermediate stage where we have a working development environment. So
B2G desktop has to be it. I mean, V1 is like what? It's a month. It's like end of the month.
Sure.
That's V1.
So our priority should be fixing bugs in B2G desktop for things that simply don't work, right?
If they're fast to fit and easy to fix. So what's the concern, I guess, is for, what makes our development lives more difficult? Or
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of us should all be developing on the device, though. But I feel like based on Phil's talk, I guess for functionality, it's easier to get like quicker turnaround time doing stuff on desktop and stuff. But if we're like, oh, we only are worried about the things we're shipping, well, we're only shipping this on a phone, and it's only going to be used on a phone. And so, like, it'd be better to be developing on the phone and notice, like, performance problems as you go, rather than, like, oh, I made this really awesome patch, and then you test it, and you're like, wait, oh, that didn't work well. But
Yeah.
I don't quite know what the cost is
That's
either
a fair
way.
point, and we should absolutely definitely be testing every single patch on the device to make sure we're not breaking something on the device or regressing some performance or something. It's definitely
We're gonna
less
test
productive.
multiple devices long term, so that's,
Right.
it's always going to be the case.
Right.
This app development is only for, I guess, the middle phases where you are actively developing something new. Because optimization has to be taken into account on the device
Yeah,
anyway.
how much new stuff is being developed though? Like how much right now are you like, okay, I need to go make a whole layout in
I mean,
Firefox
there is a
desktop.
list of late landing features that are still being developed, so there is feature development going on. And at the moment, by far the most productive way to do that is on the desktop in some way, right? But I guess if we had the remote debugger working and you could actually have a DOM inspector and a style editor and all that stuff actually running on the device and doing that remotely, that would be awesome.
Yeah, I feel like that's a longer term.
Sure.
It starts
It
to
does.
you can debug the main process and the system process. So
Right.
remote debugger, the web console works also. But yeah, you cannot debug any apps.
Right.
So there is a bug open.
You can disable the out of process.
Or you can disable out of process, but it's
And then you can get the out of process works.
I think if we had a better development environment on the phone, which is possible, like I had the debug equals 1 set up and then had like marionette scripts to restart the apps on the phone.
Yeah.
You get similar like I/O performance characteristics because that's not an app package. Not
Yeah.
everything is the same. You can get like a middle stage, like if we're saying the phone is better than any kind of desktop environment, you can get a middle stage in the phone that'll be a lot closer than it is on desktop. It's the packaged app. I don't know how much difference it makes, but I know it is significant. But
For
probably
me-
less significant than working on desktop, which is like a multi-core machine.
Yeah. Well, I guess right now, like our main goal is we're thinking of these new people who are going to start and like ramping them up and how to make it as easy for them to become probably as productive as we are. Well, I was just one of those people who
Right.
was like getting ramped up, and it was really hard. And I feel like actually the hardest thing was realizing that lots of things don't actually work when you like think they might
Yeah.
work. Like if you go in knowing, okay, right now it's a bit of a battleground and things are blowing up all over the place, but you just have to figure out some like hacky workflow that works for you and have that attitude. But yeah, I guess in like documenting all of these things,
Right.
even it was a little bit intimidating, like, okay, here's how I can launch desktop B2G, but then like things like, oh, installing flashing boot to Gecko to my phone versus just flashing Gecko versus
Yeah.
flashing Gaia, and like, oh, I didn't realize I could get like a nightly boot to Gecko build and flash that, but then like pave over the Gaia, and
So
there's just
something-
so many ways.
There's a lot of options.
Something that Justin said to me, he's not here, but he wanted to get across is we should really encourage all the new people who are starting to document things themselves. So like, as soon as you come across something which isn't documented and doesn't work, then they should document it. So do you think we're agreed that in the short term, B2G desktop is probably the only realistic thing for us to get working properly, at least until we've shipped to V1, and then we can look at trying to get development in Firefox working and development proper debugging on the phone working.
I think desktop, at least on Mac, more or less works presently. I think if we just keep it in its semi-working state, that's fine, as long as everyone knows that Nightly's broken. Basically, the documentation is the problem. One thing is we had different working environments for a long time. Like Nightly
Yeah.
worked for months, and so there's all this documentation about it. And some people still think it works because it works for some things.
Yeah.
So it needs to be like, no, don't use this. Only use this one thing.
Because I mean, personally, I would much rather develop in Firefox. Like it's 10 times better and 10 times more productive.
I don't think we can put like new people to good use until we fix those problems. Like we should tell them there's one way to do it and then make sure that one way works. Which it seems like that's what we all do is we test on the phone and the desktop.
So should that one way be B2G desktop or Firefox?
The desktop for now.
Works, we're not gonna get it.
Does debug equal 1 works on Mac for you?
Yeah. Does it not work for you?
My Linux build is pretty broken right now. There is such fault everywhere.
I get crashes too. That's always a random thing. And they go away. Like sometimes it's really crashy and other times it's fine. So that's a different thing.
So if it works with debug equal 1, you can also use Firefox desktop, right?
No.
You don't? Why?
You don't get any permissions.
Yeah,
You don't have that permission script
regressed.
anymore.
So
It's gone.
Oh,
Fabrice
that's-
made a change into the way the permissions
Yeah.
are assigned. So now, if you do debug equals 1 build, or in fact any kind of build, it doesn't populate the permissions.
You still
So
get the
you-
HTTP server.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what for desktop Firefox, to get it to work, I had to use debug equals 1, but debug equals 1 never works in my desktop B2G build, or I don't know if it still doesn't work, or what.
Who does not use debug equals 1 in this room?
Does not?
Does not.
So I didn't,
Nice.
because there was a regression where debug equals 1 just didn't work.
Yeah, with the setting stuff.
So I had
That's
to not
fixed
use
now.
it, which means that you have to remake the entire Gaia for every single change that you make,
But it
right?
was working for B2G desktops some time ago.
Oh yeah, it was. It definitely was. So is that fixed now?
Yeah, it's
No,
really
it's
good. I tested it last
Is it
week.
fixed?
Yeah, I've been using it at least last week.
Yeah?
So it's been fixed for over a week now.
Right. Okay.
Maybe
So
we
that
should
is
make like a
working.
checklist of things to check to see if they're working
Right.
so, like smoke tests for developers.
Yeah.
That's
I
not
think it does
actually
not
that
work for me
insane.
on Linux.
Also,
Because
I
someone
was-
I think it does not work for me
responsible
on
for
Linux.
telling other people it's broken, then it will actually happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They change the packaging or something. If you change packaging, you should like run this smoke test. Like find a developer and make them run it.
It doesn't have to be someone like Echo, someone like Gaia could do it now. Or one of our managers could do it.
But we could, I'm thinking now more about like how you do different things for different use cases. Like I want to debug some CSS, then you'll just maybe use the broken app in Firefox Desktop and debug it. And that's something that I just did for the first time recently and like realized I could do. I think what would be really useful for these new contributors is kind of like a scenario case kind of thing, like an FAQ, like I want to do this, how would I do this? And like here's the how you should do that, and like for various types of bugs and various types of
Each app is so different.
and
Like
for apps too.
I have
maybe.
2 or 3 contributors recently, and the instructions I gave them worked for them, but I would never tell someone working on a random app the instructions I gave to those people, because I know what works in Calendar.
Yeah, so maybe we can just accept for right now that there are a bunch of ways to do things, but make it transparent, like for which cases, what thing is best.
I think if we're worrying about new people coming on board, one of the biggest problems I've been helping out people in chat like every day is the bugs are really hard to classify into like something somebody can actually work on, something that I mean we have like blocked by and depends on and stuff, but you go through that list of bugs and you look at it and you're like, no, that's got to be fixed by somebody else. That's actually a platform. It's really hard to classify a bug into something that you can work on.
So
Tim Tobert was like doing this for days, and he was just like, "Give me a bug." I'm like,
So is that what the mentor flag is for, or is that what you mean?
yeah, mentor flag is for that, and I guess it's just not being used enough.
What is the actual flag? Is it
Mentor.
mentor?
You
Just
guys,
mentor.
I don't know if it was, things were imported differently from the GitHub than what is used, I think, so normally for mentor bugs, for like the Mozilla project, we do
Yeah.
mentor equals someone in the whiteboard.
Okay.
But yeah, I think actually a big thing to encourage is just file bugs for everything in your head. I feel like you run into lots of issues and lots of, like, yeah, getting started, I looked at the blocker list because it's like, Margaret, help Gaia finish like their project. Okay, I will look at the blocker list. I like look, and a lot of them I'm like, I don't know how to do this. Is this still an issue? And then someone will be like, oh no, I've been working on this other thing, or I've been doing this, and it's
Okay, so
it's
one
good
thing
to
we
just
can
be
all do
more
is tag,
Mozilla friendly.
put mentor in the bugs that we think would be good mentor bugs, good bugs for people to start on that.
I had all these bugs that were blocking, but no one would touch those. Put the mentor on, within like weeks, I had people like, oh, can I do this? Can I do this? Can I do this?
Yeah.
It's just, I think the core team needs to work mostly on the big blockers, and then there's a lot of other things that are easier, and then once people fix a couple of those, then they can move up to a blocker.
Yeah.
And it also kind of gives them a better than like landing on the wiki page and trying to figure out like what development modes is best for them to like go down without having them on a particular thing. Whereas if you
Okay.
go in and say, James, can I fix this bug? You're like, yeah, just set up this way and set up this way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they kind of get started. They might not know a certain trick or two, but they've got like a basis.
Okay,
You have
so
to debug.
definitely the mentor thing in bugs. And also, can I make one more request? If there's a bug which is actually stopping you from developing, like if BGG desktop is just crashing or something, just put development -blocker in the whiteboard so we can track them, and then we should get someone getting eyes on those, because they're not basecamp blocking, but they're blocking us.
There's some reason we couldn't have a flag for that, just in general, so this is gonna be a problem in every version.
Okay, so we should create a new flag.
I think so. I
Okay.
think that should be like a list we do try, triage.
Development blocker. We should create a flag. That's a good idea. Okay, so we're running out of time. The last thing I wanted to ask about is, at the moment we have the Gaia hacking wiki page, and then there's a bunch of documentation on MDN, and there's README files floating around, and they're all out of sync with each other. Most of them are just factually incorrect or out of date. What is the one source of documentation that we should be using for new people?
I think we talked before about maybe just have everything in the READMEs.
Actually,
I
we
don't
can
know if
have a
that's-
contributing.md on GitHub.
Yeah.
And GitHub will flag it and show it in bold and emphasize it.
I think the
And
only
maybe
thing-
we need to start fresh anyway.
Yeah.
Because everything is up.
So I tried that with the Gaia hacking wiki page and just delete the whole thing, started again, rewrote it, and then within like a couple of days it was all out of date and nothing that I
It was
described there
great
actually
when you
worked.
edited it.
Right. So, really? So at the moment we have the wiki and we have MDN and there's tons of information on there, but you think we should get rid of those?
There is something in the README as well. That's not the same.
Yeah.
Do you think we should get rid of those and create this file on GitHub instead?
I think we should have the README for like getting started, and then there's a whole bunch of advanced topics. And I think MDN is much better for like things that are more advanced and change a lot, and need a lot more input. And hopefully we can reach a point where within the README is consistent.
So
or the minimum you need.
Okay, so if we have a README which is like the absolute minimum that you need to get started, and then that maybe points you to MDN for more information.
It seems like things are going to be better maintained if they're on MDN as opposed to
Yeah.
wiki.
So should we take a decision now to kill the Gaia hacking wiki page because it's a duplicate and use the README and MDN instead?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The wiki is not the
MDN
right
is a
place for
wiki,
that.
so.
Yeah.
MDN is nice, especially the new MDN. It's
Yeah.
fairly nice.
Yeah, that's right.
Actually, Margaret, what is the story with the old wiki? I've never seen anything on it except BDG.
Yeah.
As a new person, I'm like really confused by it.
Wiki.mozilla.org
Yeah.
wiki. It's used for various things like prod meeting notes, prod projects, stuff like that. Actually, all the Fennec hacking stuff is held on there and up to date for building Firefox for mobile.
Okay.
Although Firefox desktop's all on MDN, I don't know. We're not going to solve the world's problems.
Okay, I just-
But yeah.
Okay, so it's now past, so we've reached the time that we agreed upon. But is there anything else that anyone wants to go? Is one of you guys Fred?
Yes, here. Hi.
Right. So these are the guys who are. What is it you want to know is about outreach to third-party developers and what advice to give third-party developers?
I'm not entirely sure what you guys talked about for half an hour, but
We've been talking about the Gaia development environment and how people hack on the Gaia apps.
right. And this is Matt. I'm Fred, and we work on the developer ecosystem team. And what we do is we work on templates and tutorials and tools for apps developers to make apps. And we wanted to connect to you guys and basically figure out how you currently make apps that are supposed to be part of Gaia, so that we can share best practices and basically show you guys what we've been coming up with versus what the Gaia people do themselves, so that we can
Right.
share that with third-party developers.
Okay, right, listen, so we've reached the end of the half an hour, so if anyone wants to leave now and go and start hacking, then feel free. It would be great if a few people could hang around to talk with Fred and share some knowledge and stuff. And yeah, is there anything else before everyone leaves that anyone wants to bring up?
I think it's really important right now. I think one of the worst things is when people try to do things, nobody really knows what state the repository is in, and there's quite a lot of times when it's known broken. I think we need to fix the development environment to make sure we're never known broken.
I can fix the debug equal one stuff.
Not the, yeah, things like the debug equals one, but also like the
Setting.
Justin screenshot stuff. Anything where we know that the latest Gaia is not going to work on an outdated Gecko, we should be locking, like, I don't know what the technical solution is. It's probably something like locking the repository manifests at particular versions and updating them at time, because we have inbound central and Aurora, and we have nightly and master for Gaia. When we're doing development, we shouldn't be trying, like, making everyone pull the latest Gaia when we know they're working on old Gecko. if they're not rebuilding Gecko every time.
You need updates, so we need to lock things, both desktop and mobile. And then whenever someone makes a change, that any kind of change, we should just lock them both. Like if Gecko knows mostly when they're going to break things, I think. You just don't know which is the good Gaia. So we probably just need to coordinate and update the manifest.
So Gecko just need to take the nightly branch. That's it.
Yeah, Aurora press 90 should be very perfect.
Well,
But I guess the
no, but if we land a change in Gecko and coordinated change on Gaia, it means Bit Gecko is going to be broken for everyone that's not building Gecko.
No, because it should not pass the smoke test and not.
No, because the smoke test uses an updated Gaia, updated Gecko.
he's talking about the developers, not necessarily the phones.
Yeah. So like
yes,
Justin
yes.
landed
It's
the
fine.
get screenshot API on Gecko and Gaia. He sent an email and said this is going to break if you don't update your Gaia. Don't develop on Teku. Like just don't update your repository until you update Gecko. But that doesn't work. That we had 2 days of everyone just saying my Gecko's broken, my Gecko's broken. We know that like that problem's going to happen, and we know that people aren't going to not update. We need to have a actual fix for it.
Why people don't update? If they feel it's broken?
The problem here was releases.
Well, they don't.
Didn't-
No,
didn't
because they're
update.
not building Gecko.
Even if you did try to update Gecko, in that case, is the default branch that holds Gecko was out of
Yeah, because
So
it was on.
you had to
It
build
wasn't
a
on a
fresh
road.
Gecko.
Yeah,
So that was one problem.
and that's happened over and over again.
So, what's an action point we can move forward on that with?
Fix
Like,
it.
what's the next thing? Fix it, yeah, but like, there's probably various
Make sure
opinions on
Aurora is
how to
merged
fix
on
that.
releases
Should we
more
start a
frequently.
thread on Gaia about, or BTG about that? Or what?
Yeah, I think we should
Yeah?
start a new threads.
So why do people do not work from the nightly branch directly? They take whatever nightly or Aurora?
Yeah, they're getting the updates from Nightly, which pass with the latest Gecko, but they're using an older Gecko.
Well, if you use Aurora in the nightly branch and develop your patches against that, it should always work.
The problem in this case is real Aurora on MC was up to date, but the Git version of Aurora was out of date. So that's the one that we pulled. So my phone, I'd have to build a whole fresh Gecko from a different Aurora to get it to work.
I don't believe we will stop that.
Yeah, that's a range issue.
It is a real end issue. It's not necessarily our issue. I'm not saying we have to change Aurora. I'm saying we need to keep that.
You don't have to try to work around that. You should just complain.
Okay,
Then
so
actually notice to complain.
Right. Oh, that's something I do brilliantly.
Yeah.
Excellent. Right. So thank you very much for your time, everyone. If anyone wants to hang around to talk to Fred and these guys about other developers and how the hell they develop for Firefox OS, that'd be awesome. But feel free to leave your. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for
Thank you.